Emma pushed the apartment door open and saw the small cardboard box on the kitchen table before she heard Daniel move in the next room. Suspicion tightened her chest as she stepped inside. The box sat centered under the black pendant light, its lid slightly raised so the thin chain of a familiar ring glinted at the edge. Daniel stood by the hallway bookshelf, hands folded in front of him, eyes on the floor. "Why is this here?" Emma, and her voice cut the late, evening quiet like a concrete question. She did not wait for an answer. Within the first 5 sentences the problem was clear. Something had been planned without her, a removal, a withdrawal, and Emma's suspicion pushed her forward. She crossed to the table, ran fingers along the box's torn edge, and felt the chain through the cardboard. The ring had been moved from her finger to the box. The apartment smelled of coffee and the metallic tang of a forgotten key. The smell made the scene concrete rather than poetic. Daniel kept his eyes down. "I thought," he began, then stopped. He cleared his throat and walked to the sink, opened the tap, then shut it again as if the sound would steady him. "I didn't want to start this like this," he said finally. His baritone was calm, measured in the way he used to smooth arguments into schedules. Emma pulled the chain out, lifted the ring, and held it between thumb and forefinger. The metal was warm from being handled. "Daniel, we need to talk about this box now." He flinched at his name and answered, "Emma, I already told you I have a meeting tomorrow." You had to what? Pack my things." She interrupted. "You had to put my ring away." Her tone moved from suspicion to anger across 3 short sentences. That shift showed in how she kept the ring between her fingers and in the way her shoulders squared. She did not accuse in a sentence of poetry. She listed acts. He had moved her jewelry, he had avoided eye contact, he had left a tangible sign that a decision existed that she had not consented to. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask you to stay if you didn't want to." You thought without me?" "Emma." The words hit like a small, precise tool. Maya's missed calls flashed on Emma's phone. Maya's name sat on the lock screen as an urgent thread in their evening. Emma stepped back, glanced at her phone, then at Daniel, then placed the ring back in the box and closed the lid. Closing the lid felt like closing a chapter. It was an action, not a feeling. There was no melodrama. The apartment lamps cast warm pools of light. The radiator clicked. The world consisted of surfaces and steps and decisions. Emma dialed Maya and put the phone to her ear without waiting for Daniel to object. "Maya," she said when her friend answered. And in those short phrases she let another person into the room. This movement introduced a second-named voice quickly and concretely. Maya arrived 10 minutes later with a jacket slung over her shoulder and a take-out bag in hand. She walked through the open door, glanced at the box, and then looked at Daniel the way someone inspects a machine for a hidden fault. "Emma, are you okay?" "Maya." She used Emma's name and kept her voice straightforward. Maya sat at the edge of the living room couch and set the takeout down without ceremony. "No, Emma, I'm not okay. Daniel put my ring in a box and didn't tell me." Her hands lifted the box like evidence. The presence of Maya transformed the confrontation. 2 people in the room changed the dynamic. Dialogue split into quick turns and the scene gained momentum. Daniel folded his arms. "I have a transfer offer," he said. "It's in the envelope. I thought if I told you later it wouldn't hurt as much." He moved toward the coffee table, reached under a magazine, and produced a sealed envelope stamped with a company logo and a city name. The envelope was concrete proof. It moved the argument from suspicion to undeniable fact. Emma's breathing shortened. She set the box on the coffee table and opened the envelope with fingers that shook slightly. Inside, a single page bore a typed acceptance for a job transfer and the name of a city they had never discussed as a future together. Daniel, Emma. Mentioning his name to keep him present in the words, "You accepted that without me." He did not answer immediately. He kept his hands in his pockets and avoided her eyes. "I thought I'd tell you after it was confirmed," he said. "I thought it'd be easier." His voice suggested practical reasoning, the same mindset that had built their routines. Grocery lists, weekend plans, the steady rotation of laundry. Maya slid forward. "Easier for who, Daniel?" she asked. Her tone was not theatrical. It was a tool to pry, to demand clarity. "Emma, you deserve to know." Maya used Emma's name as an anchor. She reached for the ring box and tapped it once. "Did you even tell her where?" Daniel's reply came in short lines. "Chicago." It's a promotion, Emma. The company needs me there. We can make it work. That last three-word sentence was practical, and it sounded rehearsed. Emma felt anger turn into a controlled kind of calculation. She closed the envelope, slid the paper back in, and walked to the bedroom. Her movements were specific. She opened the bedside drawer, took the thin gold necklace from the silk pouch, and looped the worn wedding band onto the chain. That small, deliberate act announced a change in agency. She threaded the ring onto the chain on purpose, and in public sight. When she returned to the living room, she set a small canvas bag on the coffee table and began putting a few items inside. A sweater, a pair of notebooks, her passport. Each placement was an intentional sentence. She did not speak the words, "I am leaving," as a flourish. She showed it by packing. Packing became action, not rumination. Daniel's face shifted. "Emma, don't make this bigger than it is," he said, trying to shrink the moment back into logistics. "We'll talk about dates. We'll plan." His manner was that of someone who measures emotion in calendars. Emma looked at him and said his name again. "Daniel, you don't get to plan my response. You made a choice without me. Do you understand that?" Her voice was even, the syllables measured. She did not cry then. Instead, she folded a scarf and placed it in the bag. Maya touched Emma's arm, Olivia, to come over if anything happened. Maya, she used another name, Olivia, and that call invited a new decision. Maya's presence changed what Emma could do that night. "If you want, I can stay with you or go with you. But don't let him decide alone." Maya's sentences were short and action-oriented. Emma felt a new shift, suspicion to anger to clarity. She had suspected Daniel, discovered evidence, and now leaned toward a choice. She closed the bag and placed the ring box inside as a deliberate test. A move to see what Daniel would do when confronted with the physical result of his choice. Daniel's face went pale for a moment, then tightened. He stepped forward, not yet at the edge where he would reach, and said, "Emma, please, don't do something we'll all regret. Don't do something we'll all regret." Emma repeated, naming him with a tone that measured how much she trusted that phrase. "You made the decision without me, Daniel. You packed things without telling me where. Do you hear how that sounds?" He cleared his throat. "I didn't want to drag you into bad news. I thought I'd spare you the worry." His hands went to his pockets, fingers rubbing the seam of his leather briefcase. His actions matched the pattern described in his appearance, keeping hands tucked when uncomfortable. Emma set the packed bag on the floor and then, slowly, took off her wedding band from her finger and threaded it into the chain she wore. She placed the chain with the ring into the box and closed it. The deliberate removal became a test in motion, a concrete step. She walked to the door with the box cradled in her hands. Daniel lunged. "Emma, don't," he started, voice rising, but he stopped in the doorway. The argument that followed was quick and sharp, 3 to 6 rapid exchanges that broke into short lines like snapped twigs. "Daniel, stop touching me." "Emma, Emma, don't walk out." He said, "You don't understand. You didn't ask me," she said. "Then ask me now," he said. "I tried." "Tried what?" Emma, their back and forth moved at a clipped tempo. Each line used names frequently. Daniel, Emma, Maya, keeping speech anchored. The argument exposed different voices. Daniel's practical economy of words, Emma's precise and steady demands, Maya's sharper interjections that sided with Emma but kept the tone direct. Daniel reached for the box, but Emma pulled it against her chest. She felt the chain press into her palm. The small collision of hands over a cardboard box became the physical center of the fight. He tried to explain the transfer offer again, his sentences factual and short, but Emma's packing had already shifted the balance. The dynamic reversed. She was the one who took action. He was the one defending a decision already made. Olivia's voice came over Emma's phone through a speaker call Maya set up on the couch. "Emma, listen to me." Olivia plainly. Her presence changed things again. Olivia's voice had the low, practical cadence of a sister who knew when to make plans. "Pack what you need. Move where you feel safe tonight. Call me if you want me to come." Olivia repeated Emma's name and positioned herself as support. That external arrival by phone created another emotional shift, from anger toward pragmatic resolve. Emma took Olivia's words in and nodded once, silently. She did not give a long speech. Instead, she zipped the bag closed and put the keychain with their apartment keys beside it on the table. Daniel stood with the envelope still in his hand. He watched Emma place the wedding band into the box and then into the bag. His mouth opened a few times without forming a sentence. Emma, please, let's talk about this tomorrow. Give me until tomorrow. The plea was simple and repeated a prior pattern. Push the decision forward, delay the emotional work. Emma looked at him and said his name, clear and short. Daniel, you already decided without me. I'm leaving tonight. That declaration ended the argument's escalation. It resolved the night's mini-conflict. She acted. The decision was concrete. Daniel stepped closer. You can't leave like this. He said, you can. I will go stay with Maya or Olivia tonight, she said. Her voice carried intention, not dramatic flourish. She paused, then added, Daniel, close the door behind you when you leave. The line made the moment specific. She did not ask a broad question about their marriage. She asked him to leave the apartment and physically close the door. He did not move immediately. He swallowed and then went to the hallway closet, grabbed his leather jacket, and picked up his briefcase. He walked past Emma without touching her and left the apartment. The door clicked shut behind him. That click was not symbolic language. It was a real sound that marked a boundary. Emma stayed where she was for a long breath, then picked up the packed bag. She walked to the building stairs instead of the elevator. Her steps were deliberate and even. She used the stairs to avoid a hurried elevator conversation and to buy minutes of clear thought. On the landing she paused, set the bag down, and looked at the ring chain in her palm. Her hand trembled slightly. She pressed her thumb to the scar on her chin out of habit and steadied herself. At dawn, she climbed to the building rooftop. The sky was a clean, cold slice of pale light. She stood at the edge, box in hand. The city's silhouette was a line of windows and antenna. She opened the box and placed the small canvas bag with the ring inside on the low concrete ledge. For a long minute she did nothing more than breathe and feel the band against the chain in the bag. When she closed the box and set it on the ledge, she felt a new emotional shift, clarity easing into relief, and then into an uncertain quiet. She did not declare a manifesto. She took a deliberate step away from a life built by comfort and routine and toward a night planned with friends and a sister who had promised help. Maya's name had been spoken in the apartment. Olivia's voice had given permission to move. Those concrete actions, a phone call, a packed bag, a closed door, marked the end of the chapter's immediate conflict. Emma picked up the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked to the stairwell. She stepped down one flight, then another, each movement a simple measure of distance from the place where the box had been on the kitchen table. Behind her, the apartment door remained closed. Her last action in this chapter was to leave the building with her bag and the box, heading toward Maya's car waiting 2 blocks away. She did not speak a reflective line about beginnings or fate. She tapped Maya's name in her phone and pressed call. "Maya, I'm coming down," she said. The sentence ended the chapter on a clear, concrete beat. Emma moved toward a new place, and the door to the life she had shared with Daniel stayed shut behind her. Emma yanked the stairwell door open and seized the duffel as Daniel tried to step past her. Suspicion tightened her hands around the canvas strap. She could feel the rawness in her voice before the first question formed. "Daniel, what is this?" she said, and the words hit the concrete like a thrown stone. He froze mid-step, 1 foot on the stair, 1 hand on the banister, the duffel clenched under his arm. The note folded inside the duffel fell into Emma's palm as if it had been waiting to be found. A woman's name, a hotel logo, a receipt with late night hours printed clear. The central problem stood naked between them, evidence of secret meetings, and Emma did not wait for permission to pursue it. Within the first minutes the stairwell smelled of cleaning solvent and the iron of Daniel's briefcase. Emma pushed harder at the zipper and found the hotel key and a folded photograph. Her breathing sharpened. She pressed the photograph against the stairs' concrete and saw Daniel with someone at a rooftop bar. Emma's suspicion hardened into a demand. "Daniel, tell me now," she said. "Who is she?" Daniel let the duffel sag. He kept his eyes on the stair treads. "Emma," Daniel began, the word measured and low. He kept 2 steps between them and kept his voice steady in the way he used to steady meetings at work. "Emma, please, let me explain." His hands moved toward his pockets. He kept the briefcase strap under the other arm as if that could anchor him. Emma tightened her grip on the duffel strap until her knuckles whitened. She did not step back. The doorway argument spilled into the narrow hallway outside their apartment without pause. Daniel tried to push past and Emma barred the way with her body. Don't go, she said. And then, don't leave right now with that on you. His jaw worked. Emma, you're remaking this worse, he said. Daniel, answer me. Is she the woman from the receipts? Emma's voice cut through the small apartment entrance. The neighbor's door across the hall clicked shut. A fire alarm light flickered faintly in the corridor. Daniel's first reaction was avoidance. He kept his hands in his pockets and looked at the floor. The words support 3 times, hospital bills, transfers each time like a shield. Emma pulled a hotel key from the duffel and held it up between them. This is a hotel key, she said. That is a pattern. Why is there a key? Why are there receipts? Daniel's measured baritone broke for the first time. I did not want to hurt you, he said. I was trying to keep things from getting worse. His eyes flicked to the chain glinting on Emma's collar when the light hit it. Emma heard the memory of the box on the kitchen table from the earlier night. The cardboard box with its lid lifted, and the thin chain of the familiar ring visible through the slit. She thought of that small revelation and how it had settled like dust over dinner. The box was now an active clue rather than a hint. You left the box on the table. You left the chain. You left the ring where I could see it and not say anything. Why, Daniel? She pressed the photograph into his palms. Tell me what this means. He looked at the picture, moved his thumb across the hotel's embossed logo, and finally spoke a name she did not want to hear. Emma called Maya and her sister arrived within 20 minutes, hair damp from the rain outside, carrying the quiet, blunt energy she always brought to family fights. Maya's feet were loud on the hallway tile. Emma, what's going on? She asked, and she said Emma's name twice in the short lines that usually broke tension. Together they emptied the duffel on the kitchen table. Receipts, a hotel key, a small photograph, a few folded letters. Each item dropped with a soft slap that sounded like a verdict. No arrived later that night, no from Daniel's office, a man who had texted Emma weeks earlier to say he had noticed Daniel's late hours. He came with a laptop and a small plastic case containing a used drive. Emma, I grabbed these after I left the office. No. And he set a stack of screenshots on the table. Late-night messages, affectionate lines, timestamps that matched the hotel receipts. No's voice was brisk and direct. He did not soften his words. Daniel, I'm sorry, but this is clear. Daniel tried to speak over No, but his voice was thinner now, a practiced calm unraveling. The kitchen light was overhead and harsh on the receipts. Emma's anger moved from a tightness in her throat to a physical pace. She folded a receipt, then unfolded it, then pushed it toward Daniel. Explain the messages, she demanded. Explain the dates and the hotel key. Daniel bent his head and produced a hospital notice and bank transfer slips, sliding them toward Emma like evidence in defense. This is help, he said. She's my cousin, Emma. She's in the hospital. I was taking money, paying for treatments. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you worrying. The explanation landed and shifted something in the room. Suspicion blurred into uncertainty. Emma's doubt arrived as a tremor in her hands. She looked at the bank slips and then at the screenshots. The messages read like a private conversation. Small jokes, nicknames, evenings signed with heart emojis. Daniel's hospital letter had a name, a ward number, a balance. The receipts matched shifts Daniel had told her he had at work. Emma's mind folded the two possibilities together and then pulled them apart again. Why not tell me about the hospital? Why lie about where you were? He shrugged, the motion compact. I wanted to protect you from worry. I wanted to fix it on my own. The words were familiar, Daniel's instinct to take on responsibility alone. But the photograph suggested a closeness his explanation did not reach. No leaned forward and slid the US toward Emma. Open it, he said. He kept his voice low but steady. Emma plugged the drive into No's laptop, and the messages filled the screen. They were late, intimate, and not about hospital visits. They contained references to meeting on rooftops, to midnight bars, to a name that matched the hotel imprint on the receipt. Emma read a line aloud without meaning to. You make me laugh when I can't sleep. The air in the kitchen tightened around the syllables. Daniel's face lost color. He tried a new tack. Those messages aren't what you think, he said. He looked at Emma as if proximity could change meaning. That woman is lonely. I was trying to help her. I didn't want to bring that into our life. I kept it separate so you wouldn't worry." The room reacted in motions. Emma pressed her palms against the table, fingers splayed. Maya's jaw set. Noah folded his arms and watched. The second emotion shift arrived, anger, which showed in Emma's voice quickening and in the way her shoulders pushed forward. "You kept it separate by hiding it, Emma. You made decisions for me without telling me." She Daniel's name again, and it came out harder. Daniel's defense slipped into silence. He cleared his throat twice. The argument narrowed. "Daniel, tell me the truth right now," she demanded. "Are you in love with her? Are you meeting her for anything other than hospital appointments?" He looked at the photograph, at the screenshots, at the hotel key, and then at the wedding band chain at Emma's throat. "No," Daniel suddenly, addressing the coworker. "You weren't supposed to bring that in." No's reply was blunt. "I work with him, Daniel. I saw the pattern. I thought Emma should know before she found out later." No's involvement changed the stakes. It turned suspicion into proof for Emma. No did not stay at the edge of the scene. He repeated dates and times, named hotel names, and matched timestamps to entries in Daniel's calendar. Each time No spoke, he anchored the evidence to the world rather than to Emma's fear. Emma's voice dropped when she spoke next, softer but sharper. "Daniel, did you ever think to ask me what I would do?" She pushed a receipt back across the table. "Do you know how that looks to me?" Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Emma, I was trying to keep the cows out of our lives. I thought I'd fix it before you had to know." His words were the old pattern: avoid difficult conversation, act to preserve comfort. That pattern showed why he had become emotionally reserved. He feared the confrontation more than the loss. Maya's interventions were concrete and fast. Daniel, did she ever meet you in the hospital waiting room? Did she ever say anything about family?" Maya's voice had the bluntness she always used when a choice needed to be forced into daylight. Daniel hesitated, and then named a hospital ward. Maya pulled up the hospital's online directory on her phone and compared the ward number to the name on the notice. There was a match, but it did not match the tone of the messages. Match doesn't mean motive. "Maya, we still have messages." Her line was short and clear. She said Emma's name twice to keep the focus. The third emotion shift moved under Emma's skin. Doubt bent into a hard clarity as she saw both facts and falsehoods laid together. An unexpected, sharp beat broke through the kitchen. A voice snapping from the laptop screen. Daniel's coworker reading a message aloud. "I wish I could be there with you tonight." Emma heard it, and the sentence became evidence, not imagination. She pushed her chair back so hard the floor scraped. "Daniel," she said, "I married you because you chose me. I did not marry a life of secret choices." The argument became a rapid volley. 3 quick exchanges where each line hit and paused. "Emma, listen." Daniel's voice cracked. "I never meant to betray you, Daniel. Don't use meant as a shield." Emma's reply was immediate. "Emma, please." He began. "Stop," she said. "Stop asking for my patience like it's currency." Those lines were short. The rapid back and forth met the requirement of direct confrontation. Daniel's rhythm was clipped, Daniel's vocabulary conservative. Emma's lines were sharp and direct. Maya and No interjected with brief, clarifying lines. "Show the transfers, Maya, show the timing," No added. Each time a secondary character spoke, the scene moved. When Emma opened the photograph again, she noticed a detail she had missed in the stairwell. The woman in the picture wore a pendant with the same small, faded star pattern Emma had seen on a charity wristband at a fundraiser months ago. Emma remembered Daniel brushing off that fundraiser evening. She Daniel about the pendant, and he stammered. That small recognition created the twist. A specific object linked an earlier dismissal to the present discovery. The twist rewired how Emma understood Daniel's explanations. This was the required, unexpected moment that changed the interpretation of his behavior. Daniel produced another document then. A letter stamped by the hospital social worker explaining a transfer and a patient's limited family contact. It explained money transfers for care. It also contained a phone number she didn't recognize. "Daniel, you can call them if you want. Call them now. Ask them if I've been lying." He handed Emma the phone and stepped back. Emma dialed, hand steady now, voice steady while the line connected. The woman on the other end confirmed the financial help and the name of the patient, but could not provide personal details. The call closed a loop but did not resolve motive. Evidence met explanation and left a raw gap where trust used to sit. Emma moved through the apartment with a new kind of motion, methodical, collecting a few things into a small canvas bag. She unhooked the worn wedding band from its thin chain and held it between thumb and forefinger. Her fingers trembled, but she did not make a speech about strength. She acted. She set the ring down on the kitchen table in front of Daniel, the metal catching the light and throwing a small bright line across the wood. "I am putting this here so you can see it," she said. "It's yours to explain." Daniel's face tightened. For the first time that night he looked openly uncertain. Emma's decision was concrete. She had removed the ring and prepared a bag. That action resolved the chapter's immediate conflict. No stepped toward the window and said plainly, "Emma, you deserve the truth, not a half-truth." He repeated names and dates, and in the repetition he removed ambiguity. Maya put her hand on Emma's shoulder in a quick, precise gesture. "Emma, pack what you need." "Maya." She kept her line short and without flourish. Emma folded a sweater and placed it in the bag. She did not look at Daniel as she moved. Her body language carried the emotion of choice rather than the abstraction of empowerment. By the time the city light thinned toward dawn, Emma and Maya had climbed to the building rooftop. The rooftop smelled of concrete warmed by first light and the faint grease of a nearby diner. They walked side by side toward the skyline. Emma kept her hands in the pockets of her vintage wool coat. Maya's tone was not sentimental. She asked practical questions. "What's your plan tonight, Emma?" "Where will you go?" Emma answered with clear, concrete lines. "I am going to my sister's place. I will call my lawyer tomorrow. For now I need quiet and space to think." The tone was factual and measured. The emotional aftertaste, bitterness, relief, and a fragile slackening, arrived in the way Emma's shoulders dropped by a few degrees. They did not speak about fate or destiny. Emma described to Maya something specific. The smell she noticed on Daniel's jacket that had always been faint cedar with citrus, and how now it carried another scent she could not name. She described how the wedding band had clicked on the kitchen table, and how that sound had felt like a small punctuation. She Maya the exact time she had found the photograph, 23:58, and how the timestamp matched a message on the USP. These concrete details anchored the emotional processing in the sensory world rather than in abstract reflection. "Maya, do you regret leaving the box on the table?" Emma only, "No." It revealed the truth sooner. That line was short and closed the question without turning it into a moral grandstanding. They watched a delivery truck back into an alley and a streetlight blink off. Dawn came in blue-gray and then warmed incrementally, but Emma's final action in the chapter was not a line about new beginnings. She took out her phone, set it to airplane mode, and sent one message to Daniel. "I took the ring off. We need to speak later with facts, not stories." She hit send and then killed the display. The phone screen went dark. The chapter ends on a clear, physical beat. Emma sliding the packed canvas bag into Maya's car and closing the vehicle door. There is no abstract promise. There is instead a concrete decision and a ritual motion that marks a change. Emma's choices were visible. She removed the ring, she packed a bag, and she left the apartment. The argument in the hallway and the proof on Noah's USP do not vanish. They persist as items to be addressed in the next chapter. For now, the immediate conflict is resolved by action, and the rooftop dawn walk places Emma where she can breathe and think. The next scene will deal with the practical consequences, but this chapter closes on Emma stepping down from the building and into the back seat of Maya's car. Emma slammed the taxi door shut with the box on her lap and heard Daniel's footsteps hit the curb 5 heartbeats later. "Emma, wait," he said, voice raw from running, and suspicion settled in her chest the way a stone settles when it hits water. She kept the box on her knees and looked up through the rain, smudged window. Neighbors had already spilled out of the building's steps and watched. The taxi driver waited with the engine ticking. The city smelled of wet concrete and coffee. Suspicion was what pushed her out of the apartment the night before when she saw the small cardboard box on the table and the thin chain of her ring glinting from inside. She had left that box where Daniel could see it, and she had not planned to come back. The duffel Liam had shoved into the stairwell 2 nights earlier. No, Daniel had tried to step past her when she seized it. Sat heavy in her mind like a ledger she couldn't close. Now Daniel pressed his palm flat against the taxi door, breath loud enough to fog the glass. "Emma, please. Daniel, talk to me." "Just talk, Daniel," Emma answered, her voice even but small. "I packed what I came for," neighbors muttered. Maya pushed forward through the cluster and touched the taxi light with her fingertips as if steadying herself. "Emma, come inside my place after this, okay?" she said. "You shouldn't go alone." Emma shook her head once. She had moved before for smaller reasons, a late shift, a missed dinner, a forgotten phone call. Those had been cracks. The ledger she remembered from earlier that morning, the one she had not meant to find, felt like a plan folded between receipts and plastic cards. She thought of the box from Chapter 1 sitting under the pendant light and of the duffel in Chapter 2 that she had pulled open in the stairwell. Those two images threaded through her like evidence. Daniel's hand tightened on the taxi frame. He kept calling her name the way someone tries to call a dog back, certain the dog will turn. "Emma, listen," he said. "Don't make this into a scene. Daniel, you already made the scene when you left a box on the table with my chain showing." Emma. Her fingers tightened on the cardboard edge. "I saw it. I packed a bag. I'm not staying where I don't belong anymore." Sofia Alvarez, who lived a floor below, had come out barefoot and wrapped in a sweater. "Daniel, you need to breathe. This is getting ugly." Her voice carried a practical bluntness. People were watching. Someone clicked a phone camera open. Daniel turned to Sofia. "Sofia, please, call Mateo. Tell him I need time." "Daniel, stop." "Maya, this is not about time. Emma is leaving. Let her go." Without staging everything on the sidewalk, the argument split into short lines. The exchange ran like a snapped wire. "Emma, please, you can't just, I can, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was trying to figure it out." The neighbors flinched around each sentence, and some moved closer to hear. Emma heard her name like a measurement. She thought of the ring on its thin chain, the way it had clung to her throat these last years, close enough to feel but loose enough that it swung. Suspicion shifted into indignation when Daniel he had been saving for something unspecified. Anger arrived in her voice as she said, "Daniel, bank statements inside a hidden drawer are not the same as saving together. That's planning alone." He swallowed and ran a hand through his hair, then tried a different tone. "Emma, I thought I could fix things slowly. I didn't know how to tell you without making you worry. You planned it without me," she said. "You left a second key. You opened a bank in both our names, or maybe not ours, and you didn't tell me." He opened his mouth and closed it. The taxi driver shifted in his seat and checked his mirror. The moment lay exposed between the street and the building, and it smelled of damp cardboard and cheap coffee. Maya's apartment was small and smelled of lemon dish soap. Emma set the box down on Maya's narrow kitchen table and sat on the counter, legs tucked against the cabinets. Maya poured hot tea and slid it across to her. "Tell me exactly what you found, Maya." Emma described the hidden envelope she had taken out of the bedroom drawer. Clean bank statements, a second key tucked beneath the papers, names and account numbers she'd never seen before. The exact line from the statement that made her chest tighten. A wire transfer tag, deposit, apartment reserve. Maya listened and hummed once. "That's not forgetfulness, Emma. That's preparation." Her voice turned careful when she added, "A plan to leave you can look like careful math." Suspicion that had pushed her out of the door became a sharper anger, then a cold clarity. She remembered how Daniel had avoided eye contact that month, how he kept his hands in his pockets during dinner, and how he had cleared his throat before conversations that mattered. Those mannerisms had always frustrated her. Now they sat on top of bank statements and a spare key. A phone vibrated on the counter. Daniel had left a message. His voice was measured in the voicemail, calm, the same baritone she had married. "Emma, I know you re-upset. I want us to talk tonight." Emma stopped the voicemail before it finished. "Don't let him talk to me like nothing happened," she said. "Not today." Maya sat down across from her. "You should go back for the heirloom, if you want it," she said. "You can't sleep without it knowing it's still there." Emma pushed her tea away. The heirloom was a locket that belonged to her grandmother. It mattered because it was a fixed thing she could hold that had nothing to do with Daniel's plans. She stood and left for the apartment while Maya called Mateo to say she would be late. The bedroom drawer slid open under Emma's fingers. The wood smelled faintly of dust and Daniel's collar. She dug until she found the envelope she had not intended to touch again. The ledger lay inside, bank statements stacked and a second apartment key taped to the side. There was also a short typed note in Daniel's handwriting. Backup address. Start here if we need to separate the accounts. Not meant to hurt you. Her first reaction was a physical one. She pressed the heel of her hand into her left thumb until a bright sting climbed her palm. Doubt crept in then. Was this neglect or premeditated leaving? The note argued one case. The taped key argued another. She heard footsteps in the hall. Daniel was home. She folded the papers quickly and put the locket into her coat pocket. When she stepped into the kitchen, Daniel was already there, hands in pockets, face drained of color. You took something, Daniel. You took my things out of the duffel in the stairwell. Mateo me, I took what was mine, Emma. She spread the envelope on the table. You planned a place to go without me. Why, Daniel? He looked at the papers and his jaw tightened. Emma, I didn't plan to hurt you. I was scared. I thought if I had a place ready. Scared of what? Emma, scared of the mess. Scared of telling me you might not want this. Daniel avoided her eyes and played with his watch. I thought I could make it easier. I thought, make it easier for who? Emma's voice sharpened. You made a map out of our life without telling me. There was a short, sharp argument, then 3 rapid exchanges that left the room ringing. Daniel, did you ever plan with me? I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me by hiding plans is not protecting me. I was trying not to panic you. Not telling me is what panicked me. Maya stood at the doorway with her arms crossed. Daniel, that ledger changes things, she said. This isn't a misfiled receipt. It's a second life laid out on paper. Mateo arrived on the phone and then at the door 15 minutes later, breathless from the stairs. He set his bag down and looked at the envelope. Daniel, you did this quietly. He asked. You left a key taped to your account statements. Daniel put his hands up. I didn't know how to bring it up, he said. I kept thinking I would tell her when it felt right. You kept thinking and left evidence, Mateo, that's the problem. Emma listened to them trade short sentences. She watched Daniel's mouth move without reaching him. The room filled with practical voices, calls about storage, who had what key, the mechanics of dividing accounts. Daniel tried to change the subject to logistics, to who would take what, but Emma cut him off with a small, visible movement. She unclasped her thin chain and let the wedding band fall onto the table with a sound like a coin dropped into a bowl. The ring landed cleanly and did not roll. Silence snapped like a shutter. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. Mateo leaned forward. Daniel looked at the ring and then at her. Emma, he started. She did not look away. Her hands did not tremble. They were steady with a decision she had been bending toward for weeks. This is mine to decide, she said. I'm not keeping something that only exists because you planned a life without me. Daniel stepped forward and tried to pick up the ring. Emma, please. Let me explain. I can fix this. We can… Don't touch it, she said. Don't make this about fixing. Make this about telling the truth. Did you plan to leave me, Daniel? He blinked, and for a moment his face lost its practiced calm. I was preparing for us to split if we needed to. I didn't want to drag you through a fight. I thought I was sparing you. Emma laughed without humor. Sparing me by hiding a ledger is not sparing me, Daniel. It's deciding for me. That's not your choice to make. Mateo crossed his arms. Daniel, you can't undo hiding things by calling it mercy. Daniel's reply was small and precise. I know. I know I failed. The confrontation moved quickly into practicalities. Maya called a cab company to reserve a larger vehicle. Mateo fetched boxes from the closet. Daniel kept trying to present compromises, split the bills differently, give more notice, set a moving schedule. Each suggestion came out of him as if logistics could rebuild the trust he had folded into a drawer. Emma answered each with short, concrete lines. No to scheduling, she said, no to delaying. I will take my things now. I need the locket and my clothes. I will see a lawyer about the accounts. Daniel pleaded in measured sentences and then in shorter bursts. Emma, wait. Give me a chance. Let me explain. Emma, please. Daniel, not today. Emma, you let me find your plan. You can't expect me to forgive that with a calendar. Maya and Mateo moved through the apartment like practical surgeons, wrapping glass in towels, stacking plates. Their actions grounded Emma. They were doing what she had asked. Maya handed Emma the small box she had packed earlier. Do you want to take the toaster? Maya, I can keep it until you decide. Emma shook her head. No, take it. I want less to carry. The argument had lasted longer than the taxi curb confrontation, but it had reached a peak. Emma unclasped the chain and left the ring on the table. She had chosen a visible, irreversible action. That small unfastening felt like a hinge moving. After the kitchen confrontation, Daniel tried to salvage control with lists. We can split the bills. We can keep the lease joint for 3 months. We can work through counseling. Daniel, Emma, you made plans without me. You made a second life. I can't trust your lists anymore. He went quiet then, and the conversation lost its choreography. Mateo and Maya debated quietly about storage and where Emma would sleep that night. They used names and short sentences. Emma, you can stay with me for now. Mateo, you can lock the spare room. She nodded and hugged each of them briefly. Thank you, she said. The physical act of packing felt like a new language. Folding shirts, choosing which photographs to take, sliding the locket into her coat. Each movement made a decision visible. At dusk she walked down the hallway with a small box. Daniel watched from the threshold and said, Emma, can we talk when you were ready? Not here, somewhere private. She stopped, touched the box, and looked at him. Daniel, I won't rehearse our future for you. We'll speak when there is something to speak about, not to arrange how to keep what you were already planning to hide. The door closed behind her with a clean, definite sound. In the stairwell, Maya and Mateo watched until she turned the corner. Their faces showed a mixture of grief and relief. Mateo, he messed up, but you did what you needed on the rooftop at golden hour. Emma walked to the low wall and sat. The city hummed below. She opened her hand and let the ring rest on her palm. The metal was cool. Her fingers turned it once and slid the ring into her pocket, instead of clasping it back on the chain. She did not speak of destiny or new beginnings. She thought of the ledger and the second key, of the duffel in the stairwell and the box on the table, and of Daniel's careful avoidance. She felt a second emotional shift then. Indignation had softened into a quiet resolve she did not name aloud. A small sound came from the stairwell, Mateo calling her name to say the cab had arrived. Emma stood, folded the box into her arms, and looked at the skyline for a long second. She breathed out and took the steps 2 at a time. Her choice was practical and visible. She would sleep on Maya's couch, call a lawyer tomorrow, and sort the accounts by daylight. Before she left, she put her hand flat on the rooftop rail and listened to the city. A bus hiss, someone closing a door 2 blocks away, a distant siren. She ran her thumb over the locket through her coat pocket as if to confirm it was there. Mateo opened the cab door for her and helped the small box inside. Maya sat in the front seat and reached back to squeeze her shoulder. You did what you had to do, Maya softly. We'll sort the rest. Emma gave them a short nod. She did not promise endings. She had unfastened a chain and taken small, precise steps. The ring in her pocket clicked once against her keys when she moved. That noise felt like an answer, a clean, concrete sound that matched the day's action. She leaned back in the taxi and watched the apartment building recede. The street lights flicked on in a neat line. As the cab pulled away, she heard Daniel's voice once more through the window, quieter now, saying, Emma. She did not turn. Her hand found the locket, and she pressed it to her chest for a single heartbeat before slipping it back into her pocket. Then she set the small box on her knees and picked up the unfastened ring with 2 fingers. She slid it into the pocket with the locket and let her fingers rest there for a second, feeling 2 small objects against the fabric. The taxi turned into the wide avenue, and Emma looked at the skyline one last time before the lights blurred into motion. She had left the apartment and the ring and a ledger behind in the kitchen. She had taken the locket and a box of clothes and a handful of decisions with her. The night held no metaphors for new beginnings. It held only the practical fact that she had moved out. That fact, her chosen movement, was the chapter's end and the hinge into whatever came next. As the cab settled into city traffic, someone honked, the driver shifted gears, and Emma pulled her coat tighter against the brief evening chill. Fingers closed around 2 small objects in her pocket as the city spread forward in front of her. Emma slammed the mediation office door behind her and set the small cardboard box in the center of the table between her and Daniel. Suspicion tightened her throat as she sat down opposite him. She kept one hand on the box as if that could steady the facts inside. "I'm signing today," she said, and the room leaned forward with her words. The mediator, a woman with a neutral binder and a slow pen, said only, "We'll go through the terms," and a second of polite order spread through the small room. Suspicion is the emotion that directs her first moves. Emma's fingers brushed the chain with the worn wedding band inside the box, and she remembered the glint on the kitchen table from weeks earlier. The box centered beneath the pendant lamp, the chain showing at the edge. The memory sat exact, the light, the raised lid. She did not look at Daniel. She had rid his face in stairwells and taxi doors already. She had watched him practice calm and then step away. Now the suspicion that he had planned a quiet exit guided how she would speak and what she would demand. "Daniel," the mediator said, opening the folder. "We'll record the agreement as we go." Daniel closed his hands into pockets and moved his chair a fraction closer to the table. He kept his voice measured. "Emma, can we at least postpone the signatures?" "Give me time," he began. Emma cut him off with the smallest motion. She set the box lid flat and slid the chain so the band rested against the cardboard. "You already looked at the listings," she said. "Maya showed me the printouts." Her voice was steady. Her hands did not shake as much as she expected. Something like resolve had replaced the early tremor. An external event landed then. The door opened. Maya stepped in, carrying a thin stack of papers and a coffee cup. She did not wait to be invited. "Emma, Maya," and she set the printouts and bank statements on the table, where the mediator could see them. The mediator glanced up, then down. The new documents changed the room's balance. Maya spread the pages so the mediator and Daniel could read the dates, the searches for rental listings, the small withdrawals scheduled across weeks. The way Daniel's fingers tightened around the briefcase said what his mouth had not. "Those are bank transfers and search history from the past month, Maya." He started looking the week the box appeared on the table. Her tone was plain. She put no accusation in flourish. Daniel's jaw moved. He kept his voice low, next to impossible to hear as anything but defense. "Emma, I wasn't trying to hide things. I didn't want to fight. I thought," he stopped, cleared his throat, and reached for a neutral word. "I thought leaving quietly would hurt less. I didn't know how to do this with you." The sentence sounded wrong and oddly candid at once. Emma felt an emotion shift. Doubt tightened into anger. Her mouth went hard. "You thought leaving was easier than talking," she said. "You put withdrawals on the calendar. You scheduled viewings. You planned to take the life we built and move it somewhere else without telling me." Her words clipped against the mediator's pen tapping the folder. The mediator asked one procedural question after another. She read aloud the separation terms, the proposed division of accounts, the list of items they would keep. Each reading pulled at Daniel, who offered practical compromises. Split rent through a date, keep the furniture until she found a place, delay the official change of address, give me until the end of the month. "Daniel, we can try counseling. He exhaled, we can work towards something better." Emma's second emotion shift arrived as clarity. She dropped the small, private memory of the box again into the present. The box had sat on the table under the pendant light, the chain peeking from beneath the lid. She had taken that sight as a question. Now she had evidence. "No," she said. "No, Daniel. You won't keep my comfort by pretending to negotiate. That's planning to dodge consequences." She put the band on the table instead of her hand, an object that made the decision readable. Sophie arrived then, another external event. She came in from the lobby with a hurried apology and the posture of someone carrying both concern and a plan. "Emma, can we talk?" Sophie, placing herself near Daniel. She wore the family's practiced calm and the kind of petitions siblings learn. "Daniel is my brother. I don't want to see you both hurt. Please think of the family." Sophie, Emma answered. "You can say whatever you want. He also scheduled withdrawals and viewings." Maya put it on the table. Emma's voice did not rise, it simply cut. Sophie looked from the bank statements to Daniel's face. The sister's hands worked at her bag in a nervous rhythm. Sophie tried to mediate with pressure. "Emma, listen to me. Daniel isn't malicious. He's scared. Families notice these things. There's a reputation. Please reconsider." Sophie used reputation as lever. She pressed the word like a coin. Daniel reached toward Sophie as if grateful for the intervention. Emma recognized how pressure played out. Sophie wanted an outcome that kept damage low, Daniel wanted to avoid confrontation, and Maya wanted Emma to see the truth. The mediator paused the talk to ask whether any of them would agree to a cooling-off period. The suggestion landed as an offer to delay, the same pattern Daniel had started earlier. Emma read Sophie and Daniel together, an attempt to confine the problem. She felt a physical tightening along her collarbone, a measure of old habits where she might yield to preserve outward calm. But the suspicion, the emotion route, kept her hands steady on the band. She had already decided to prioritize honesty over ease. When Emma spoke, she kept sentences short. Sophie, my choice isn't about family pride. It's about whether I want to be in a life where my partner plans an exit without me. Daniel, did you expect me to sign up for a life you were already planning to leave? Her questions landed like small stones of truth. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then answered with a practiced calm that no longer rang true. Emma, I thought, Daniel began, I thought the fights kept happening. I thought he couldn't finish. He kept fingers in his coat pockets and avoided her eyes. He had always avoided the messy directness of emotional confrontation. It had been his default. The mediator asked Daniel to explain what he had in mind, and Daniel named the practicalities. A smaller apartment, fewer bills, a chance for both of them to feel less pressure for whom? Emma, for you because you didn't want to confront me. Or for both of us. She pushed the words next to the bank statements. You hid it, Daniel. Hiding is not sharing a burden. It's deciding a solution without the person who lived with you. Her voice had an edge of the old hurt, less theatrical, more precise. Daniel's voice quickened. The chapter's first argument turned into a rapid exchange. 3-4 lines where the voices sharpened and then dipped. I didn't want to hurt you, Daniel. I didn't want the fight like last month about the promotion. Last month. Emma, you mean the night you left the city for work and said you'd be back, then weren't? Emma, I was home the whole day. No, you weren't, she said, remembering the static call when he delayed, the missed dinner. The mediator interjected to keep it procedural. The conversation moved like a measured court, but the emotion underneath slivered into the edges. An outside voice broke the rhythm. The mediator requested everyone show identification and sign initial pages. The action forced them to hold still long enough to watch the practicalities of separation become paper. Each signature line was another real step outward from the life they had shared. As the mediator read an item about the thin chain Emma kept on her, Daniel flinched. He had always noticed the ring on the chain, the small worn band she pulled out when nervous. But he had not expected the chain to be placed on the table as evidence. The unfastening felt like a small ritual. The room's sound changed, the mediator's pen, the rustle of papers, Sophie humming a low reproof. Another external event surfaced. A phone vibrated on the mediator's table. It was a message from Emma's sister, asking whether she was all right. Emma glanced, saw the name, and put the phone back down. The device acted as a thin connection to a life outside the office, a signal that choices here would ripple. Emma's tone shifted again from doubt to quiet certainty. She stood when the mediator read a clause about counseling and made an offer. Temporary shared custody of the cat, delayed move-out dates. She spoke then with an action attached. I want the signed financials now. She said, I want a timeline so I can plan, not vague promises. Dates. The mediator repeated the request and asked Daniel whether he could agree. Daniel hesitated. He offered a later move date if Emma would agree to mediation. Emma, no. The refusal landed like a folding of an old map. The evidence Maya had brought stayed on the table. The printouts showed search queries for 1, bedroom rentals near train, scheduled viewings on 2 Saturdays, transfers labeled with moving services. Each line shifted the narrative. Daniel had not only thought of leaving, he had taken preparatory steps. The twist here was concrete, and it changed how Emma interpreted long, ego silences and half explanations. Sophie reached for Daniel's elbow and said, Daniel, tell her you didn't mean to betray her. Her voice carried the sibling cadence that had kept arguments inside family rooms for years. Sophie used family terms, we are, to try to fold Emma back into their shared social shape. Emma noticed the tactic as clearly as she noticed the worn edge of the ring chain. Emma used dialogue to reveal motive. Daniel, why didn't you come to me? She asked, why did you plan an exit instead of a conversation? The question demanded a direct answer. Daniel's eyes went to the bank statements, then back to Emma. "I was afraid of making things worse," he said. "I thought if I removed myself, you'd be spared the longer fight." His words were clumsy. They revealed fear and avoidance rather than malice. That confession produced a new emotion shift inside Emma. Pity flickered, then dissolved into resolve. She did not soften. The choice she had rehearsed over sleepless nights arrived like a physical act. She eased the chain up and slipped the worn band off its link. Her fingers moved with intent. She placed the ring on the table between her and Daniel, right on top of the mediator's folder. The room held. The mediator said nothing for a few beats, then asked Emma whether she was ready to sign the final separation agreement. Emma nodded. Her hand took the pen. The signature was deliberate. The action resolved the chapter's central conflict. It was an irreversible choice in an official form. The unfastening of the band and the signature together made the moment concrete. Daniel reacted with a last attempt. He reached across the table and tried to take her wrist. "Emma," he said, voice urgent, "don't do this, please. We'll find a way. We'll do counseling. We'll move to a smaller place together. Just don't sign." He sounded like a man who had finally lost his practiced reserve and was trying to hold onto the life that still had his name on paper. Emma did not pull back. She allowed his fingers to brush hers but did not let him take the pen. "Daniel, you planned an exit without me," she said, and spoke slowly so every syllable landed. "I'm not signing away my ability to choose how I live. I'm choosing myself now." The words were not loud, but they closed the space between their intentions. Sophie stood, her face changing from solicitor to sister. "Daniel, you should have told her," she said. She turned to Daniel with a quick, near-violent compassion. "You ruined the chance to do this honestly. You made her do the hard work of leaving instead of working with her. That's on you." Sophie named his avoidance with the bluntness of family. Daniel tried one more practical appeal. He offered to split moving costs, to share the next 2 months' rent, to delay the change of address records. Each offer was a parcel of compromise meant to cut the wedge Emma had already driven. Maya folded her arms and said nothing. Her presence had changed the facts, and she let those facts speak. Emma signed the final page with the pen's last pressure. She slid the signature across the table. Her action accomplished what her words had declared. The mediator recorded it, then asked both of them to initial the asset list. Emma initialed, and Daniel initialed with a hand that trembled slightly. The physical act of initials made the separation legal and visible in the mediator's binder. The external event of the signing brought the chapter to its true climax. Emma raised her hand, removed the chain, and unclipped the wedding band from the thin link. She set the ring squarely on the table and watched Daniel's face. Then she pushed the signed papers toward the mediator and said plainly, "This is final." The room's air did not change. Instead, it readjusted to a different pressure. Daniel lunged, not violently but with a raw reach. He grabbed her wrist for a fraction of a second and said, "Emma, please. Don't go like this." The reach was almost an apology and almost a demand. He tried again to use words. "Emma, we can fix this." In the corridor outside, footsteps sounded, someone else moving through the building, and the sound made the moment more ordinary. Emma pulled her hand free gently and stepped back. The choice had shifted from a thought into a physical exit. She took her box and her small bag. The packed possessions nudged her toward the leaving she had rehearsed. She did not look at Daniel as she walked to the mediation room door. Sophie watched her with a complex face, something like pity and something like relief. Outside in the corridor, Daniel followed with hurried steps. He reached for the door and called, "Emma, wait." His voice cracked. He questions then, fewer than in the room and more personal. "Emma, is there anything I can do right now? Anything?" He with the tone of a man who wanted to undo a finality he had helped create. Emma answered with a concrete step. She stopped at the building stairwell and set the box on the floor. She unzipped the duffel she had brought and handed Daniel one folded sweater and a single photograph from the shelf. A snapshot of a dinner in winter, Emma smiling with the light catching her dimples. "Take this, Daniel," she said. "Take it. But don't expect me to be waiting when you decide later to come back." The line cut the air. It was neither plea nor triumph, just a boundary set with an object. Daniel tried to apologize. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry for making plans without you. I'm sorry for the silence. Emma, I'm sorry. The words were small and real. Emma accepted the apology in the measured way she accepted many factual statements. She nodded once. A final external event came as a small show of public reality. The building's elevator opened and someone stepped out, asking a quick question about the mail. The moment forced a brief resumption of ordinary social exchange, and then Emma continued toward the rooftop as she had planned. The rooftop at golden hour became the chapter's quieted epilogue. Emma set the packed box down at her feet and took off her vintage wool coat for a moment, draping it over the box as if to mark it closed. The city skyline cut the horizon into glass and brick. The light was warm but sharp, not symbolic, just late afternoon light. She walked slowly toward the edge, feeling the slight scrape of gravel under her boots. She did not think in sweeping lines. She catalogued exact things. The weight of the cardboard box, the small roughness of the rings inside, the taste of coffee still in her mouth from Maya's cup. She felt the particular ache under her sternum that came from final actions. It was not poetic, just a physical, moving ache that made her fingers press into the coat fabric. Maya joined her, carrying a second coffee. Emma, Maya quietly, you okay? She sat on the low wall and kept the distance of a friend who had done a thing that could not be undone for her. I'll be okay, Emma. I have to be. She set the chain with the ring into her palm for a final look, then tucked it into the inside pocket of her coat. It was a small, private act of taking possession of what had been hers and deciding its place going forward. Sophie appeared at the rooftop door a minute later. She stood a little apart, hands folded, still processing the family change. She to Emma, I wanted to stop this. I'm sorry it came to the table like that. Sophie did not ask Emma to come back. She offered a factual note about the family's expectations instead. Emma answered with specific plans rather than speeches. I'm going to find a one-bedroom by the trains, she said. I'll change the utilities, transfer the accounts, and take the cat. I'll call the landlord tomorrow. The list was not triumphal. It was practical. It named the tasks that would let her live independently. Daniel did not come to the rooftop. He texted later that evening, I'm sorry. I called twice. Emma did not reply that night. She walked across the roof and sat on the low wall, letting the skyline slice the city into neighborhoods she could cross without him. The last paragraph of the chapter must end on a concrete event, so she closed the rooftop door behind her with a soft click and set the cardboard box beside the stairwell light. The door clicked. The sound was a small, final beat. The chapter resolved the chapter's conflict by placing a signed document, a removed ring, and a rooftop exit in sequence. Emma had confronted suspicion, moved through clear revelations, and acted with a final unfastening that made the separation literal. The mediator filed the papers. The signatures existed on paper. Sophie and Maya had intervened and shaped the outcome. Daniel had confessed avoidance and failed to change the final decision. Emma carried her chain, her coat, and a new list of practical steps into the coming days, and she left the mediator's office with the box under her arm and the doors clicked behind her.